Hello, my name is John Little, and this is...
Hello, I'm Rob Miller. I'm with City of Monroe.
Yeah, and Rob literally just drove up like a minute ago, so I was getting a little nervous. I might have to do this by myself, but luckily he got here in time, so yeah, we're good.
Somebody told me 11:30.
I don't know who that was. Anyway, 11 o'clock works. So yeah, today I'll get out of the way of the projector there. We're going to be talking a little bit about the journey, the story of City of Monroe and their GIS initiative, which really was revitalized and took on new shape and form and new energy around 2015. And they've had quite an incredible journey since then. So we're going to review sort of some of the film and what it took to get them from where they were to where they are now. And hopefully you'll find the story engaging. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rob.
All right. Go ahead and start. Monroe is it's a town about 35,000 people. We're southeast of Charlotte. We're starting to see a lot of the overflow. My responsibilities, I'm with Energy Services. So Energy Services is 48 people of the 480-person organization of City of Monroe. We're in charge of keeping the lights on and keeping the natural gas, keeping everybody warm in the winter. So we are one of 8 providers for municipals of natural gas in North Carolina. We are one of just over 70 cities that have their own electric department. So background on me and why we went through this journey, I started out with natural gas operations back in 2012. I was in that position for 3 years. After that, I interviewed for the engineering general manager, and I received that position. Being as the natural gas system manager, I was a customer of the engineering department. So the engineering department, we are 9 people that are in charge of basically engineering design, compliance, and asset management for the electric and natural gas departments. So we have a lot of responsibility, and basically our goal is to set it up, meet with the stakeholders, communicate what's going to go on, get good plans to the crews so that they can go out and they can build either anything as small as a house service all the way through NCDOT coming through with the bypass or widening 74 like they're about to do. So we have to have nice, accurate plans to make sure that we don't put something in conflict for what's going to be coming in later. In 2015, when I took on this position, my goal was to just stop everything and just take a look. You know, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? We've got 9 people and we've got quite a workload. You know, we have about 300 gas services a year. We have about 100 electric services a year. We do, I would say, 95% of our engineering in-house. We don't like to use consultants. We like to keep that in-house so that our people are growing through that process. So in 2015, we went up to Greenville Utilities Commission. We knew that they had a GIS system that was much better than ours, and we wanted to see, okay, this is much better. We understand where we're at, but let's talk to you about how you got there. How did you actually get to this point? And so John and I, we formed a relationship there at GUC, and Thinking Hats Technology is a company that John works with on the side. He said, you know what, we think we can help you dive into this and take a look at things. So we started with a 3-step planning process, you know, discoveries and needs assessments, strategy, selection and design, phased implementation. We talked to all our stakeholders. We talked to our customers outside of the organization. Our biggest customer are the internal customers in our organization, in which we feed the electric and the natural gas departments. So we talked to them. Hey, how are things going? Are you actually receiving things on time? Are you receiving quality products? Once you turn it in, do you actually see it go in the mapping, or does this take some time? Things along those lines. So we discovered a lot along that journey, in which I'm not sure was really told to me when I took on the position. So it's one of those things where you figure it out as you go. back to the process, we looked as the as is, where are we today? What is needed, and then where are we going? Where are we going is very interesting because technology lends itself to the natural gas business in particular and the electric. GIS mapping, our crews understanding where everything is, where fuses are out, where the underground pipe is, where they need to go locate, where they need to deal with these things is very important. The natural gas industry is governed by federal regulations in which we have very prescriptive requirements all the way down to now any pipe that we put in, we have to know the manufacturer, the date, testing that was done, and we have to know exactly where we put it. So you think about that challenge, and all of a sudden we're a paper-based organization and we're working towards technology. But what we had to do is we had to make sure that we didn't apply the technology before we had the right workflow processes in place. So we looked at staff alignment, we looked at staking process and technology, confidence in GIS. These were our three main things that came out of this look. One thing, staff alignment, I'll go ahead and hit that one. You ever watched 5-year-olds play soccer? It's, the ball's here and there and the whole group. Well, that's how the engineering group was functioning. Nobody stayed in their lanes, in which we had, I hate to say it, but we had our highest dollar engineer out designing a house service because the house service had to be done tomorrow. And he was the only one that had any time to do it. It wasn't a very good use of resources. So we stepped back and we said, okay, how do we take a look at this staff and make sure that people stay in their lanes? And we've reorganized and made sure that you're responsible for this part, you're responsible for this part. One of the main parts of the staff alignment was GIS. So we have everything would come in, it would go out to the field, come back in, and everything would come back to one person. And in which, at this time, I discovered we had about 4,500 as-built that were not in our mapping system. So you talk about lack of confidence in the mapping. You've got linemen and you've got gas technicians out there in which you've got this great technology and it looks great, but is any of it correct? Can they actually rely on their information? So that I'll go ahead and skip to number 3. We found out real quickly that nobody had any confidence in our GIS mapping. So we've put a lot of time in. We started in 2002 with GIS. A lot has gone in which 2005 our electric department went and GPSed every asset that we had that was above ground. So you talk about good input. You don't get any better than that. The gas side of things, they had taken and they had digitized AutoCAD mapping, in which in 2010, the gas department had a challenge in which the GIS fed the modeling software, in which they didn't have endpoints. So they took and they put the meter at the centroid of the parcel. And you talk about confidence in GIS. Well, everybody's looking at your map and your meter's in the middle of your living room. And every gas technician's going, why do I even bother with this? I'll just pull up and I'll use it. I'll get my locator out and I'll find what I really need. Because what you're offering me here has no value to me. So the other one, number 2 there, staking process and technology. This was one of the biggest finds. We found out that anywhere, so our house services are basically our everyday work, we found out that it was taking anywhere from 4 to 5 hours to do one of these. This is anywhere from 10 feet of wire or 10 feet of pipe to, maybe 1,000 feet of pipe, 1,000 feet of wire. And as we dove in, we looked and we said, okay, what is going on here? How can this actually take this long? How can we only get 2 services out a day? And so, I'll go ahead and I'll go back real quick. There's another slide coming up, and I'll go ahead and skip to it, and then we'll come back. So what we did is I went in and I did every job. And I either shadowed each person while they showed me their job that I didn't know how to do. Here's me actually going through the staking process and designing. This gas service was 35 feet. And it took me 4.5 hours to do this, put this job out. That's an hour every 10 feet. It's ridiculous. So what we found out is we had a staking software, in which was kind of a leech on top of GIS, in which the post-processing process typically took anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, in which you could kind of set it down and do other work, but only kind of. And it was one of those technologies that I believe, had it been implemented correctly, it would have been really worthwhile. But we didn't know how to even start to get it incorporated correctly. So I said, you know what, why don't we tear back down, and why don't we just let's do these by paper for a little bit. Let's just go out, let's hand draw it, let's get it out to our folks. We cut it down to, it was 1.10 hours per job. So, and I'm going, okay, so we have this fancy software in which we've got our GPS points for our designs that we can get out in 5 hours, or in 1.1 hour, we can get a hand-drawn piece of paper out there that shows exactly the crew how to build it, and we can flag the route, and they can go and install it. To me, this told me that we had gone out and we had gotten too much technology and hadn't set up our workflows properly. And I see a lot of nodding of the head. It's, when you go and you get technology, you got to look and see, do you have the people that can actually get this implemented? Do you have is the workflow correct to lay this technology on top of? Because what happened here is we operate leanly, and they put it in, and they said the salesman said it's going to work, and we're good to go. And sure enough, we're sitting here, and back when I was a gas system manager, I would get service lines in which they would be due in a week. The sod is already down and the closing is in a week, and we're all of a sudden in the critical path. What you'll see here, this picture out to the right, during this we recognized an opportunity in which, being the city, during the permit process, we actually get day one before construction, the house plan, we get all the information that we need, and I recognized that the engineering wasn't picking it up day one. They were waiting for the builder to call and say, I've dried in everything, pipe is sitting there, and actually you got about 15 days until I sell the house and you're done. And so instead of picking up, typical houses anywhere from 120 to 180 days to build. So instead of having 120 to 180 days to actually organize this workload and work our way through it, we were picking it up in those last 15 days when everything was critical. And then you have 4 rain days, and what's your construction crew do? You can't go out there and mess up all the brand new sod. You're going to get yelled at for that. So just some of these little things that we discovered through this process. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back here, and I'm going to let John cover the RASCI. And
sure. So I'm glad you came today, because I would have to wing that part. So, all right, planning. A lot of people get a little nervous around the planning. You spend some money, you get a plan, you put it up on the shelf, and nothing ever happens with it. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of the planning, and I'm sure Rob will attest to. It was sort of a rallying point for the organization to bring everyone together to talk about GIS, talk about implementation strategies, talk about the benefits, talk about business process. And, like Yogi Berra said, if you don't know where you're going, you might not get there. And that's sort of the concept around the planning, is to get everyone charging forward, to get that rally point, to get that energy involved. And that's what sort of happened with the planning. And the 3 things that came out of the opportunities that we struck out on were the staff alignment, and the staking was a big issue with process. And then the third was data confidence. So with the planning, we looked at roles and responsibilities. We used a tool called RASCI, and we looked at everyone in the organization, their roles relative to the GIS as a technology, but the business process as well. And we're able to articulate it in this grid format and be able to explain folks' roles relative to the technology and the business process, and start helping people understand where they were going. This is the staff alignment part that Rob talked about. This is the lay of the land for the whole department. And one of the big things that we looked at was we needed a dedicated GIS position, right?
Dedicated GIS, and we also shift that as-built workload up a level to where every technician that designs the job, the as-built comes into them. They now design it within GIS. We send out the product in GIS. Now it comes into them and it's turned into a 5-minute process. Then it does go to the GIS specialist for quality control. But now we've got 4 people working through our as-built workload instead of just that one bottleneck.
And to the point of the presentation, I mean, we have complication, we figure out where we're going, we simplify it, and that's where we find our progress. So with those as-built backlogs, with sort of the bottleneck that we were finding in the business process, it really helped establish justification for that position. And we've talked about the staking process and the technology. Here's sort of the as-is state that we found during the planning. We have a lot of flow and technology and data moving through a staking application that was sort of ancillary to the GIS, and there's a lot of detail there, but for sake of time here, basically we ended up aligning everything directly onto the GIS, and we were able to remove in a very significant amount of workflow, including GPS out in the field. We were able to simplify it, and I think the return on investment there, as you mentioned before, we were going from how many a day to
we're now at 6 to 7 a day to before we're getting maybe 2.
Yeah, so improving efficiency, and that's really important for all sorts of business processes within the city, from economic development to construction management, et cetera. And then the confidence in the GIS. Rob told me, we got this investment, we've got folks that are using it, but we've got this eroding confidence, and it's a barrier for folks to become engaged and use the system the way it should be. And we talked about the confidence being components of accurate, reliable, and consistent data is the fact that I can go in and use this map, this GIS data to make informed business decisions versus sort of implicitly knowing the knowledge of the land, and someone who's been there 20 plus years nearing retirement, we're able to now engage the system and make those business decisions.
Yeah. One other note on the confidence, we also hold trainings every other week, electric department, the natural gas department. We're getting to much deeper levels of use than we ever imagined. Also, we're getting that word out there. It's in front of them. The technology's there. They're getting used to it.
So really what 2015 looked like for the city of Monroe, there were a lot of projects going on, and it was really a revitalization of their GIS initiative. And I think that it set the stage for where they are today. So we're going to take just the last couple of minutes of the presentation and talk about, from this foundation, what they were able to build on and where they're at the current moment. Some big wins for energy service is ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Enterprise. Emily Belk was the GIS specialist, the full-time position, and she was supposed to be here today, but she fell ill, so she couldn't join us. And she has really stepped up and engaged this platform to really help the organization access and disseminate information out of their GIS. It's been fantastic. We've paired them up together, both an on-premise technology and the web-hosted, ESRI-hosted platform. So just real quickly on Enterprise, for those that are working with this technology, you might be curious, they've had a lot of success with being able, like I said, disseminate that information out throughout the organization. Internally, department-wide, field access to GIS maps. They've got a redlining process in place, so folks are out in the field, they're redlining, they're getting that information back in, but more importantly, they know what happens to it. They know that their feedback counts and that it makes changes to the source data, and that is the most important part, that feedback loop, building the confidence. We've got ArcGIS Online is reserved mostly for the public access. We do public-facing apps there, streetlight outage apps, things of that nature, third-party integrations. And then just real quickly, there is a lot of technical minutia behind here. This is the part I really enjoy talking about. But basically how we deployed Enterprise and Enterprise and ArcGIS Online together. Keep changing the names of everything. But basically, we've got this really cool setup, and I'd love to talk to anyone who's interested in learning more about how we found success with this configuration, both satisfying internal needs and the external needs. So this is a snapshot of the portal, their internal viewer. This is a snapshot of the data that they're housing externally. There's weekly trainings going on. Emily, I wish she could be here, because she's holding weekly trainings for all the crews, and they're really engaging with the ArcGIS apps. Here's a streetlight outage map that Thinking Hats created for City of Monroe, and it lets the public come in, and it's very much integrated with their mapping technology. It sits right on top of ArcGIS Online and leverages the cartography and the map composition that they've put in place. Emily has. Atlas OMS is the road ahead that we're doing with City of Monroe. This is a GIS-based project management tool that leverages ArcGIS Online that my firm is rolling out. And this is a snapshot of it. And it basically helps them manage their projects and their activities. Here's an example of it leveraging ArcGIS Online so you can see their infrastructure. And I know we're coming up here sort of on a time limit, but basically you're able to access the information. They're doing their 811 tickets, their locate system. NC 811's directly integrated with this, mashed up together with their ArcGIS Online, their GIS infrastructure. And that's, I think, really sort of a testament to their next phase. In conclusion, their next phase is really starting bringing in more intricacy and sophistication around their work management, understanding asset management concepts, maintenance management, and tying that all together, leveraging that investment that they put into the GIS. Now that they've built that confidence, now that they've got the staffing alignment in place, they're able to really build on that and pick up speed. So it's been a great working with them in the transition from 2015. They're really off and running now, so it's fantastic. And then just a completely shameless plug, Thinking Hats Technologies was officially launched in January. We've been working with Monroe for the last 3 years, and it's the firm that I represent, and we're a one-stop shop, and I'd love to talk to anyone who's interested about these slides or what we did, and appreciate Rob for showing up to help us do the presentation. Yeah. So with that said, I think we're just a few seconds over, but thank you.
Yeah. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So what kind of data model did you use for like your budget?
We use SIME and we use Synergy. And those were in place when I arrived. And what I found is we were actually taking an overlay and then tracing it in each, because for some odd reason we went cheap for that last 10%. And now we've gotten it back and we purchased those adders to where our GIS, we were having to maintain multiple systems. Now we can maintain just GIS and it feeds all these other things. So we got those adders to where that model just updates itself as we update our GIS.
They're also ArcFM based, so as far as geographic data modeling goes, it's all the ArcF. It's largely influenced by that. We'll speak more later.
We've also got an outage management system that this feeds as well, in which it's predicting what electric device is causing the outage. And so you talk about your maps have to be correct. You've got 10 guys out in the field relying on this information to go track it down. And, reliability is the key to service for us on both the electric and gas.
So as far as the number of staff you consider to be full-time GIS positions, what are you looking at?
We have one. Yep. What we've done is we've shifted some of those responsibilities and trained other folks in that spectrum. So we had some turnover, and some of that's going to happen, but we went out and we hired a lineman, a gas technician. They both moved to engineering. The previous engineering group always wanted everybody had to know AutoCAD. But what we found is everybody knew AutoCAD, but they didn't know how to install a gas line. So we get these plans that would look great, but our equipment wouldn't actually fit there, and you couldn't actually do the work in that space. So on that created challenges in which you got these guys that are used to dealing with shovels and backhoes and excavators, in which now they're in your engineering and trying to deal with the technology. That was one of the other things is why we took it back to paper and let them grow with the process. But they're all fully trained in drawing in GIS now. We actually use a software called Bluebeam, in which we'll export our GIS or use DOT plans, and we'll draw on Bluebeam and do our plans there, to where we don't really have to deal with AutoCAD much anymore.
Basically, managed it so that you've got your engineering guys and engineers updating the GIS.
Yes, sir. And then Emily she's gone from the doer to the quality, and she's now a QA position basically. And then also the visionary for helping John and where we're going with Portal and some other things.
So this always gets a chuckle in these type of groups, but there's this concept of the GIS priesthood, and it's only the GIS priesthood can work with the GIS. And so when we ask about the GIS staffing here, yeah, we have one, but I think, as Rob was mentioning, now we're democratizing the access to the GIS, right? Where your job isn't GIS, and that's what you do. It's engineer, and you're using GIS as a tool set. Yeah, there's still that place for the discipline and the specificity of the position, and that's really integral to what they were doing to be successful here. But we've spread out that usage. I think that's a great testament to the success they've had. So,
yeah, we're not scared of wearing many hats. We're all trained in electric and gas. Normally we hire with the expertise of one and train in the other. So then taking on something like GIS or something like that, it's just run of the course for us. Yes, sir.
Where's the red line application that's submitted? I'm assuming your linemen have that.
Yep.
And then it comes to where in the process?
That will come to our GIS specialist, in which she'll do the quick update there. If it's a longer process update, she'll outsource that. She'll create a session, assign that to one of the technicians, in which they can go in and do. It just depends on the workload at the time.
Does somebody, do you see that then?
Yes. So,
I'm assuming the GIS person doesn't know about electrical
well, that's.
operations.
No, you're incorrect there, actually. So she was an electric engineering technician for 15 years. So we kind of luck into that. Yeah, go ahead,
The
sir.
question you were going to ask is, what's the platform on which they're actually doing the red line?
Sure.
So they use ArcGIS. It's Enterprise. I keep wanting to say Portal, whatever, but Enterprise, and they go out with the Explorer app. And then there was total rejection for the redlining in the Explorer app. So what they found was the iOS native tools and some of the like Snagit tools that you can do for screenshotting work fantastic. So they're just screenshotting the thing and then drawing and then sending that in as an attachment on an email. Progress through simplification, you know? There's all sorts of issues around the redlining tool and being able to share the sessions and all that, so they found that.
We require 3 measurements. You know, they got to get a power pole, they got to get a house corner, and they're familiar with those standards. So we've always had that. They've just been in paper. Yes, sir.
So we're using heavily the session manager. We've got the designer on the electric.
Yep.
And that's pretty much it. No, all that's going through the portal. Well, they are using mobile and web, obviously, but not the ArcFM products is what I was assuming you were asking.
So iOS devices or Androids or mix?
No, we've had a mix due to our IT, but we've ended up on iOS.
What about a work order management system?
We have an AS400 system. In which, yeah, thank you, appreciate the chuckles. We don't control that, and so being the small subset of a city, it takes care of our customer information, our billing, and it actually fits the needs. But we're working towards what subsets of our business could we do in like an asset management. For substation, we have a product called Cascade, in which we track all of our substation parts, and they have their routine maintenance that kicks out work orders. So for certain business types, we have individual programs. But the city as a whole, it kind of, every department pick your own asset management if you don't like the one that they have. And John's product there is helping us creep into that. We're just, we need to apply it when we can, and getting the people trained. We're actually getting to the point where they're asking for the technology now instead of pushing back. And so I think we're nearing the peak. Yes, ma'am. There is, and that's been in place for about 15 years. Yeah, there is. It feeds GIS every day at 7 o'clock, and, meters on, who hasn't paid, turn-offs, things along those lines, because then they all end up in the outage management. That all feeds from GIS to go to the other parts.
There's huge potential if you have these type of legacy systems that don't have a geographic component or aren't geared towards operational activities such as the Energy Services Department, still leveraging GIS, moving the work in and out. I mean, there's certain touch points between compatible units, work management, meter readings, and et cetera, but it's all possible. I think that's what lies ahead for the city of Monroe, but if anyone specifically wants to talk about some of the techniques of integrating, I'd be happy to speak more after this.
All right. Well, we thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.